Okay, why don't we get started then? Before we go ahead, are there any questions about anything we've done last week or the previous weeks? Okay then. Today in our last class, we are doing reporting and exporting of your results because of course you haven't been sitting here listening to me for the last 6 weeks to not get any results out of your surveys. So I just have here, I already went and loaded this up. This is the standard demographic survey that comes with Qualtrics, and you can either load it up or just watch or use one of your own. And I've already done this, but I went in and generated test responses. And as you've heard me say more than once, this is always a good idea to go through just to help test and see, get an idea of what your data are going to look like. And so once you've done that and you've started collecting your data or you've done your test things, you come up here to data and analysis. And it can take a minute or two for this to load. I've loaded a couple of times today so that it would go a little bit faster here. But if you go out and collect 500 responses and the first time you come in, it's going to take a couple of minutes to load. So don't worry, that's normal. So your basic data table will come up. And you have your variables or questions across the top and responses in the rows, typical spreadsheet type setup. Let's talk about this, what you can do with this table for a little bit. One is you can check various observations or respondents. And when you come to with selected, you can delete them or you can edit them. And then you can go in and select what fields you want to edit and why you want to do it. Now, this is going to do the same value for all of these 3 responses. I really, I'm showing it to you because it's there and I want you to know what it does. I don't normally recommend editing responses in Qualtrics. One, you're really not supposed to be editing responses. You're not supposed to be changing people's answers to your survey. Also, you want to have some kind of a record of what changes you've made. So if you need to make changes, you're cleaning your data, which is a proper thing to do. I always suggest downloading it and cleaning it up in SPSS or something else where you can have a program that will document what you did. I'm going to show you how to load it into SPSS. That's actually pretty easy. You can filter the data and, by the start date, or any of the responses that you want here. Embedded data, we're going to see some of these later on. Contact field, so if you're looking for a specific person, you can go by the last name and find them. If you have 500 respondents and you're going through this page by page, it's going to be impossible to find a specific person. And on the rows over here, there's actions. And you can view the response. Okay, come on. This usually loads right away. And so you can see, it says this was not displayed to the respondent because they didn't consent to take the survey, or at least this first one. And come down, and if there's embedded data, it will be here. And then, of course, the location data. Tell you how long it took them to do the test. This was generated test response. So, of course, it's very quick. You can delete it. These retake response and retake as new response. If somebody, for whatever reason, needs to retake the survey, you can send them a link. So they retake the response, and you can send them this link, and they retake the response. Now, if you just do retake response, whatever changes they make will be done to their original set of data, their original responses. If you do retake as new response, then it says, oh, they are, you'll have another line of data in your table here. These retake responses, these can be useful if you're doing something like an approval, travel approval workflow, where somebody applies or requests travel money, and then somebody else has to approve it, and you want all that information in the same record. There's also a couple of other things that these can be useful for. They're not used a lot, but they can be really useful when you need them. And then you can export all of this to a PDF. So if you want a paper record of their responses. You can delete the response, view it as we just did. You can also view it by just double clicking on the row. We'll come here and take a look at tools. You can create a new field. Say you want to add two fields together and create a new one. You can do that and do some bucketing and formulas. Again, I don't really recommend doing it this way because, again, there's no record, there's no documentation of how you did it. And it's always better to do something like this in SPSS data or whatever you're using. If, as I'm going to show you in a few minutes, you're providing reports online for people to look at, and you need to create that variable for those reports, then yeah, this might be useful. I'm going to show you save layouts in a second. If you need to delete data, the survey previews, when you click the preview button in the builder to test out, it gets marked as a preview. Survey tests any data that you might have imported, offline responses, and all responses. Of course, this is something you want to do if you've done all this testing, you have all these previews and survey tests and everything. You want to get rid of all that before you actually distribute your data so that you have a clean data set. You can decide which columns you want to show in this layout. And of course, the page size, how many records are on each page. And so you can have more than one layout for your data. So if you want different views of the data, you can create them. You just give them a new name and save as new, and you can go back and have different views of your data within Qualtrics here. This edit button lets you edit everything all at once, more like you would be doing, say, in Excel. Again, as I said before, it's better if you do your editing by writing code in SPSS or whatever, so that you have that record. Export and import. You'll probably be using this quite a bit. You can export the data. We're going to look at that in more detail in a moment. You can import data as well. I've not seen many people need to do that, but if you're sending a survey, an ongoing survey to somebody at another institution, you want to take yours with you and just continue it, this would be one way of taking that data with you. You can automate exporting the data, but you have to send it to a SFTP server, which most normal people don't have. This is really good for businesses where they can set up and have a week's worth of observations or responses sent to a different data set someplace and just have that automated. Same with import. These are all any downloads that you've already done. So you can see, and viewing the automation history, it's obviously just the history of the automatic imports and exports that you've done. Let's take a look at export data, because you will certainly be doing that. You have several options of how you want to export your data. CSV is good for just about anything. If you're working on a PC, when you download it as CSV, most likely Excel has taken over that file extension, and if you just click to open it, it will open up in Excel. You can download all the fields. That's usually what you want to do, or you can decide which ones. If you say do this, then what you see in this table, what you can view here, is what will be downloaded. But usually you want to download everything. The difference between the numeric values and the choice text is, as you can see over here, it says none of these, yes, none of these, Latino, female. That's the choice text. If you say numeric values, then this might be downloaded to your data as 0, 1, 3, 2, whatever you set up when you built the survey were the numeric values behind these labels. And whether you do the numeric or the choice depends. You have that option with all of these. And so it really depends on which one you're going to use and what you need to do with it later on. Because if you download the choice text and then you want to do something, say in R, or even state or SPSS, you want to use these as a dependent variable. Well, it won't work because it's a string variable and it needs to be a numeric value. Whenever you're doing your downloading, always take a look at the more options. They're pretty much the same. compress data as a zip file. 99 times out of 100, you won't need to do that. It might already be checked. You want to uncheck it because it just makes opening it and using it in something else a little more complicated. Use commas for decimals. That's, European thing. Remove line breaks. If you have long text answers, people might have hit the return key a couple of times, and that can make the data difficult to use in something like SPSS or Excel, so you can remove them. This recode seen but unanswered questions as -99, and you can change it. You might see in some old surveys where if somebody didn't answer a question, it's coded as -9, or as this says, -99, or if they weren't supposed to answer the question, it might be coded as -8. And that's a holdover from the olden days of punch cards, if you know what that is, where you had to have a value, some kind of a value in there. You couldn't have an unpunched value. And so coding it as, like a -9, when it can only be, say, 1 through 3, would make it pretty obvious that that's a special value in the data, and make it a lot easier to see. And then you can write programs to, write code to say, okay, ignore all the -9s. If you're using a published survey and they have code, SAS or SPSS code to go with it, you might need to do this to make the code work properly. This is multi-value fields as a check all that apply. So if somebody does not check something, typically it would be left blank, but sometimes you don't want that. You want it coded as 0 instead. Export viewing order data for randomized surveys. I think we talked about this a bit when we were doing survey flow, the randomization in the custom and the survey elements in the survey flow, the randomization. This will tell you what order different blocks or different questions were shown to the respondents. And this is important when you're testing your survey to make sure that it's randomizing properly. Split multi-value fields into columns. If you have, again, a check all that apply, those fields sometimes, depending on what type of download you're doing, all of those might be smushed into one column. And then that makes it difficult to work with, to figure out how many people did each choice. This will split each of those multi-values in each of those into a separate column. And it'll be 1 if they checked it, and either blank or 0 if you did the recode. Use internal IDs in the header. Every single question in your survey has its own ID. That's not the Q1, Q2, or whatever. It's not human readable or making any sense to a human being. I've never seen a need for this, but it might be. You can do some behind the scenes programming in Qualtrics, and that might be where this is useful. I've never seen it anyplace else. Exclude survey response edits. I've never seen anybody use this either because it's excluding data, and you really don't want to do that. And include download links for user uploaded files. You can have your respondents upload a file along with the survey. And this will simply include a column that has a link to that file in Qualtrics on the Qualtrics server. So that can be useful. You do tab separated values. Of course, there's Excel. You can see some of these change a little bit as you go through. XML, most normal people don't use that. SPSS you will probably use. Again, download all fields. You see these are a little bit different here. I just suggest leaving, unless you have some big long text answers, 2,000 characters should be fine. Data, use commas, all of these are basically the same. When you, by default, when you download the SPSS, it will download it as an .sav file and automatically open up in SPSS. But sometimes you might want the syntax file, which is the program to read the data, then the corresponding raw data. And this just might be because you need it for preservation purposes. If you're working on a grant and you have to share your data when you're done, you'll want to share the syntax file and the text data, not the SPSS data. I'm going to download this in a second. You can have the data sent to a Google Drive, Google Sheets. And then the user submitted files are the things that respondents uploaded. You can get that separately. But as I say, Excel and SPSS are the most likely that you'll use. So I'm just going to click on download here. And it's usually pretty quick. I've got 200 observations in this. But you know, the download is quick, but SPSS is often slow to open. Did I click the right button there? Ah, I said save. No. And it's a zip. That's not what I wanted. See? Now close that up. Oh, SPSS is not cooperating with me today. Yeah. Let's do an Excel. Okay. All right. Okay, can you see my Excel table? If I get back to it. Okay, can you see the Excel table? Yes, okay, great. So, it's your standard Excel table with all of your data and, some of the default data. And we talked about, anonymizing these and what happens when you difference between an anonymous link and a personal link, and anonymizing responses and not anonymizing responses. And then, of course, all your data. And the SPSS actually finally opened. So what's nice about the SPSS is that it has all your variable names, and it creates all your variable labels for you. And it does all the value labels as well. And of course, all your data. Are there any questions so far about exporting your data? Okay. Now, you don't have to download your data to do some basic reporting on it. If you come over here to Text IQ, now I've already set this up because this can take a while. When you first come in, it will say, oh, we have to go through and index and process your data before you can do anything with it. And so, it'll tell you up front, it can take a while depending on how much text data you have. Then once it's done that, you can start setting up what it calls topics. The text analysis in Qualtrics, as you can probably guess, is really fairly rudimentary. It's more or less just looking for words and phrases that you tell it to look for. And so you set up your topics here, and then you add them. And here's a couple of topics that I made. And you can see it sorts through the data and finds the ones that have that particular topic. As I say, it's okay if you're, you just want to get a quick look at, who's using particular phrases or words. This is by no means, real qualitative analysis. It's nothing like Atlas TI or in vivo, but it can be useful for just looking, as I say, doing a quick look at your data. But setting this up can take a little while. You can also do basic crosstabs. Says, oh, this can take up to 20 minutes. It shouldn't. because I've done this a couple of times. There we go. And it tells you there's some new variables because of what I set up in the text IQ. And as you can see, they've updated it. So they're going to say, you know, here are the things you can do. And you're welcome to look at this. I'm going to skip it for now. Let's close these up. So once it's ready, all you need to do is take your variables and drag them. If you want it to be a column or a row in your table. And down here you have all, you know, all your choices of what to go, of what you want in the table. If a certain option is not appropriate for the table that you have, it will be grayed out. You know, and it'll tell you why. And you can recode on the fly. This won't change your actual data. It's just for this particular table. So you can exclude certain levels. You can, you know, so you can recode all of these to collapse them. So you can do some interesting things with it. And there's analysis settings, confidence level. You do get an overall chi-square test. But, you know, it's nothing fancy. You can export the current table, cross tabs or all cross tabs, you know, the whole bit. And as it says, it'll export the table to Excel. You can filter it by any of the things. So if you only want, say, responses after a certain date or before a certain date, you can do that. And then, you know, if you just want to create a new crosstab, you go ahead and create a new one. So, you know, this can be helpful. You know, it's nothing you'll be able to export and drop into your dissertation or your book or journal article, but it's good for getting an idea of what's in your data before you really jump up and down on it in SPSS or something else. You can also do weighting. It's here. I really don't recommend using Qualtrics weighting. And it's nothing against Qualtrics. It's another one of those things. If you need to do weighting, you really should talk to an honest to goodness statistician before you collect any of your data, so that you know what to do and how to do it and why to do it before you actually need to do it. And most likely that statistician will tell you to do whatever weighting you're going to do in SPSS using code. But it's here. Any questions so far? Okay, the last part, and this could be pretty useful, is creating reports. Now, again, this is probably isn't something you'll be able to copy and paste and drop into your dissertation or whatever else. But again, it's useful for getting a quick look at your survey. If this is something that's an ongoing survey, it's good because you can set up your reports, and each time you come into it, it's automatically updated. So you get all your new tables and charts and whatnot each time you come in with the new data. Again, all your variables down the side, including the ones that you did in the text IQ, any embedded data that you might have had. And you can see it's got those, if I put my thing there, if you see next to sample embed, there's those zeros and ones. That means that it's numeric. If you remember, when you create an embedded data field, you have the options, and that's where you can say whether it's text, numeric, or date. And that's why you'll need to do it, because you can't do certain things with string variables or vice versa with numeric variables. In a lot of ways, this is kind of like the survey builder. If you click on that particular visualization, you see over here on the right, you can manipulate how this looks. So there's a number of decimal places. You can do a breakout by any of the variables that show up there. You can change the title. So you see over here, it says new title. You can change the visualization itself. So basic table, bar chart, line charts, pie charts, breakdown bars, a stats table, or a gauge chart. And you can change the order. Same with the x-axis, truncate the labels. You can play around with these and see what all of them do. And you can change the axis values. In a lot of ways, this is kind of like doing charts in Excel or SPSS. You can come up here and do options. You can remove it, or you can export it to an image file, and that will be just this one chart. You can export the page, PDF, Word, PowerPoint, or CSV. Move it up, move it down, hide it all together. Come up here to the tools. I'll show you what's being used. You can edit the report. And so you can take certain ones out that you don't want in there, perhaps. Maybe you don't want the embedded data or any of the other topics. These report settings, this, as you might imagine, sets the defaults for the entire report. So a lot of these are the same things that you can do for the individual visualizations, but this applies to the whole thing, and then you can go in and make the little changes you might want to on the individual visualizations. You can name the report and create a new one, so you can have different reports depending on your data or who needs to see it. Again, another filter, just like before. Add report breakout. This breakout would apply to the entire report, whereas the breakout that we had over here on the right just applies to this one visualization. Of course, you always want to see the report. You can export it to PDF, Word, PowerPoint, CSV. Export raw data. This will just take you back to the data analysis thing that we just saw. It's not exporting the data to just make the table. It's going to do the whole thing. If you've exported before, you can go back and get those downloads. What's really nice is manage public report. And what this does is it creates a web page. And so anybody can view this report at the following link. So copy that. Oh, I'm going to take this out. Copy it, click done. Open up a new window. Now, anybody who has that link can see your report. So this is nice if you're, again, doing one of these ongoing reports and your boss or other people just need to see the report. They don't need to get into Qualtrics and, do everything yourself or theirselves. You can just create the report and give them the link and they can go in and look. And this will be updated as new data come in, and they can download it as a PDF if they want to. The other thing in that managed public report was access code protection. This is just a rudimentary password thing. And so somebody would also have to have the password in addition to having that URL. Can't you export any of these diagrams to Excel? Unfortunately, no, that's not an option they give you, as it just goes to an image file. You can also, if you don't want to put the report on a web page, you can email, and you can use your contact lists if you want to. And then the date, when it's supposed to go, the time, the subject, what format you want. What will end up happening is send it to myself. I'm not going to change anything else. Okay, why is it not letting me save? Okay, this worked earlier. Why is it not letting me? All right, fine. Do it that way. No, I want it today. All right, fine. Well, for some reason, it's not letting me save it or send a test email. But what this would do is send email to the people in the contact list, and the report would be attached either as a PDF, a Word, a PowerPoint, or a CSV. Now, as you can see, you can schedule it so that, as it says, weekly, every Monday, Thursday, at whatever time. And so automatically it would send the report to the people in the contact list. So that can make your life a little bit easier, especially, it's already set up and it goes. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to keep going in yourself and regenerating the report and re-emailing it to people. And I think that's about it. Are there any other questions? About reporting and exporting, or at this point, anything else in Qualtrics? How do I stop or close a survey? Probably the easiest way to do that is to go into survey options. It's run a little slow today. Where did it go? And then change the survey availability. And then you can change that to whenever you want it to be ended. Yes, all of these videos are recorded, and I will post the link. Into the chat if I can. And so when you come here, just scroll down. I've got a bunch of more esoteric things. And then if you go to workshops, I have other videos on anonymity, experimental design, and all of these workshops that we've been doing are in here. And I'll have today's, which would be the new one, up tomorrow. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Amanda. I've been doing these these workshops. Oh, it's what, maybe 5 or 6 years now. Yes, I have always recorded them. At least when I previously remembered to hit the record button. What's nice with Zoom is that you can set up the meeting to automatically record. Back when I did it in Blackboard, or there was even something before that, Adobe Connect, you had to remember to hit the record button. And there were a couple of times I forgot to hit the record button. Well, things didn't change a lot back then from one year to the next, not like this time around where they have all the new interface. So it wasn't that big a deal because I just took the previous years and plopped it in. But it's a lot easier with Zoom because it does it automatically and I don't have to worry. I don't have to remember. Any other questions? All right, well, you all know how to find me. I'll put my email in. Oh. Okay, then. Thank you very much for putting up with me for 7 weeks. I'm glad you all stuck it out. And as I say, you know where to find me if you have any questions about Qualtrics, SAS, data, SPSS, general research methods, brewing beer, smoking meat. I do those too. All right, then. That's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.